Check 1, 2. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, it's amazing. Check 2, 3.
I'm in Max.
You are listening to Happy Jack's RPG Podcast.
I'm in Max.
Pursuing the RPG hobby with reckless abandon.
Why, hello, and welcome to Season 28, Episode 15 of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
I'm Stork.
I'm Chris.
In this episode, Sean from outside Washington, D.C., sends us an email on railroading and PC versus PC violence.
He's very specific. From just outside Washington, D.C.
Just outside Washington, D.C.
He cannot disclose exactly where.
Right.
Yes.
But first, if you'd like to email us, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. We always need emails. And if you'd like to watch the show live, you can go to happyjacks.org/live, and we're on Saturdays at 10 a.m.-ish Pacific time. happyjacks.org/live. And there we go.
We might be switching back to Fridays at some point, though, right?
I don't know. At some point, maybe. I don't know.
There's a calendar under the whole schedule thing. Just check it, because that's how I know when we're on.
happyjacks.org/schedule.
Yep.
Can I say, I usually listen to the podcast at like 1.75 speed.
Do you really?
Yeah.
How?
Well, that can get through more podcasts like that.
Oh, okay.
But
We don't talk slow enough to
no, it's
understand
fine.
Really?
The cadence is fine. But that intro that you just played that I listened to is way too slow. Like, listening to that at normal speed,
Which intro?
the music.
Really?
Yeah, it's way too slow now. I can handle the conversation being slower, but that
You need to make an
threw me
EDM
off.
version of this, then. We'll just drop that. It'll be twice, 1.7 much faster.
1.7, yeah.
faster, and yeah.
I'll do a fast song at like 160 BPM. You're like,
It becomes a meditation app at that point.
right?
White noise.
Yeah, the bass, each bass drop is going to sound more like a click, and it will put together and make its own frequency when you speed it up.
That's how we find time travel.
That's exactly
sound engineer humor. With the frequencies all stack on each other, it'll cause it. Oh, it's gonna be so funny.
Okay, so we'll start with our our initiative roll. I'm going to have to make a jingle for this. I don't have one yet. I have the baby cry. Everyone loves the baby cry.
Yeah, that went off like gangbusters. That was the most popular season on record.
I don't think I even have it on here anymore. I think I got rid of it because so many people complained about it.
Well, it's initiative roll, so we just need dice, right?
Oh, there you go. Perfect. All right. Somewhere you're in the giant gaming complex someplace where someone has built a giant gaming commune where everyone comes together in games, and you're in an elevator going down, and someone is about to GM for the very first time. And they're very nervous, and they ask you for advice in the time it takes you to get from the 12th floor of the giant gaming commune down to the sub basement where they allow people to play role-playing games.
Run, don't walk. Run away. I don't know.
What is your advice?
I think the biggest advice I would give somebody like that is to just calm down, relax. This is a conversation with friends, telling a story together. It doesn't. Anything that you do bad, they're still going to love. Mm-hmm. Just enjoy yourself. Don't worry about the rules. Just jump in.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
But that's easier said than done. I mean, what would you do to calm down? Because I find it can be kind of stressful. There's sort of there's an expectation of you as a GM, and whether it's self-imposed or not. How do you get that out of your head?
Yeah, it never works when someone says, "Calm down."
Nope, it doesn't.
Jesus.
In fact, sometimes it gets you hit.
Right. Will you just stay calm, please?
Would you calm down?
As I find myself as being my own worst enemy, I ended up stressing myself out and inventing the situations and scenarios, and then you spin yourself out. I mean, it's easy to say calm down, but it's how do you as a GM sit down with a group full of strangers and be calm? What is it you do?
Well, one thing I would suggest, I guess there's lots of things you can do. Chamomile might help.
Listening to Happy Jacks at 0.7 speed faster.
I think, yeah.
Micro doses of THC. Very tiny amounts.
Very
though,
small.
Because you still need to be able to function.
Right, yeah, because then you could just go off a whole different direction.
Yeah.
But what are the 3 moments in the game that you can visualize in your head, the 3 things you want to see happen? Write those down, steer to that, and whenever you wonder what's going to happen, go back to your 3 points.
That is the best advice
That's a
I've
good
ever
idea.
heard.
That's a very good idea.
I'm calm just thinking about it.
Right.
So no, I'm not. I'm seriously, because it gives you a roadmap and it gives you something to cling on to. And it's not overly world building, which is what I do. Is I write way too much to make myself calm. So and then I have so many notes I can't find where I'm going.
That is one of the problems with over preparation.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Is that you end up having an answer for everything, and then you have to go and find that.
Yeah,
answer.
you're like, well, okay, wait, that was a guy named... Yeah,
Right.
Right.
That's you notice when we have APs that I'm running, that tends to happen occasionally. It's like,
But we've
I came up with this guy. I know I have a name for him.
But what we've always said is, like, do all that world building and then you kind of throw it away because you need it in your head to figure out your world so that you can justify and you can operate within it and set up your situations with a sense of a purpose. But then you have it all memorized and you should be able to just like not bring it with you and you're able to riff off of it.
Well, I mean, if you
By
do
having
it,
three bullet points or 3 scenes that you want to get to, you've condensed all that world building down into here's what I want to accomplish with this particular scenario today.
and that's in a way, it's not 3. That's how I approach most convention games. Is I'm like, okay, here's like what I'm thinking the end scene might be like. Here's what I'm thinking, the opening scene might be like, and then here's a couple of options that could happen, right? And then I just kind of detail those things out, knowing full well I may end up throwing them all away. And I think, but having it at least gives you that direction to steer toward, like you said, steer towards, not
Steer towards.
Not-
Or back into, like when you feel stuck.
right.
Go back to
Or because the players decide to go off the script somewhere, and then you're like, okay, I've got this is part of my agenda. How can I? Here's something I can aim towards,
Right.
As opposed to like I'm just making shit up, and now I got to take copious notes to figure out what happened.
There's this really great book by Mike Shea. Actually, he had 2. One was the Lazy Dungeon Master, and the other one was The Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. And The Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master is a really great system, protocol, that I've actually put into my games and kind of reskinned for my games. And I call it Introducing 10 Truths. He called it something else, I forget, but there's like 10 things that you come up with that may or may not be true, Schrodinger's truths.
Okay.
For the session, and if they're true, you pull it off the list. If it makes sense, you use it. If not, you chuck the whole list. On the next session, you come up with 10 more, and that way you sort of have a meta idea of what might be going on, but you're not over planning, and you have an arsenal to work with.
So give me an example of like what some of those truths might be.
So, well, let's just say we're in a masks game. We just finished up a masks game with my home group, and the supervillain is actually under control of another supervillain.
Okay.
That may or may not be true.
Okay.
The father of this superhero knows that they are a superhero, and that was supposed to be secret, right? And you sort of kind of jot down 10 things that might or may not be true, and then you come out with like 3 locations or set pieces, so that you don't have to think about that in the moment. So, like, I know that this big superhero fight is going to happen in a quad with all of these corporate buildings, and that's a set piece. And so I can have like buildings collapsing, and I can have all kinds of things happen, and or maybe I'm on top of a bridge, some suspension bridge or something, and that's my set piece. And so come up with like 3 set pieces, 10 Schrodinger's truths, and that's probably all the prep you need. Maybe some NPC names.
Right. Oh, I always have a list of NPC names. Just go to, what is it, random
FantasyNameGenerator.com.
FantasyNameGenerator.com.
And
That's
there's-
it.
Well, there's also
Which
just
has almost every
sci-fi.
conceivable
I
name
love it.
generator that exists.
It's just Aftertoon Entertainment just going through and like, oh,
Yeah.
I need a random storm.
Or a random hillbilly name. There you go. I
love those.
Buford. That's where I got the name for my hillbilly character from Kimmy's when she ran the one shot of Demigods. So I played the guy that was a scion of the war god.
I don't know
So
if
I
I
had-
play in that game.
I don't know if you played in that game. It was a one shot. It might have one or two. I think it was one. And I played this guy. I don't remember what his name was, but he was a pig farmer somewhere in the south, and he was the scion of the war god. So he had a war pig. His name was Buford. And he would call him, see, see. And his, sort of uniform was a dirty T-shirt, had big poop on it. And stuff like that. He was a pig farmer.
Was he related to Windy Draw?
Nah, not really. He was more of a. It wasn't like Cajun anywhere near that. He was more of like a probably Georgia.
He's more like Cooter from
Yeah. Well, he was a.
That's an actual character name from Dukes of Hazzard. Which,
I remember.
Of the many
Cooter.
questionable things about Dukes of Hazzard, that's probably the least. The fact that he was named Cooter.
Yeah, I don't know what. Yeah, I wonder if the Cooter was
Yeah,
used in that way.
well,
Then I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah, I do.
All right.
I remember as a kid snickering at it.
Okay, I read last time. Does someone else want to read the email this time? Well, it's a little longish, isn't it? A little long in the tooth. So maybe we can divide it up. Does someone want to start it, or should I start it?
I'll start it,
Okay.
sure. Dear Happy Jackers, and hello to the Happy Jacks Nation. In this email, I bring you a horror story and ask how you'd handle the situation, as well as the table environment that may have helped enable the situation. Every 2 weeks,
2 weeks.
I run a cyberpunk-style game using the Interface 03.0 setting for Savage Worlds. The players are all adults and relatively new to tabletop RPGs, but we've been friends for years. Due to COVID and geographic distances, we meet up through Zoom and usually spend some time hanging out and chatting before starting the 4-hour game session. I don't usually drink alcohol when I'm gaming, perhaps one beer if anything, but I don't have any preferences or table rules for others and alcohol consumption during the game. We're all generally responsible adults, but more on this later.
This is a Chekhov's gun.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
This
it is.
It's
It's
foreshadowing
Richard.
right there. Currently, everyone is a member of a low-life street gang caught in the usual machinations of larger gangs, megacorps, and geopolitics. In a previous game session, one of the players, we'll call him Player 1, and his character, PC1, opted to kill his gang boss NPC for no particular reason, just a textbook murder hobo moment. This surprised the rest of us, which led to an interesting PC standoff scene. But eventually, everyone put their guns away, so we made that scene part of the game story and moved onward. Then, in a later game session, PC1 was wounded by a flying drone device that latched on and injected him with mind-controlling nanites. Affecting the PC like this was short-term and helped provide a clue to the larger game plot. In roleplay terms, it was more of a suggestion nudge and not a complete GM control, as I did not want to derive player agency. Yeah.
Deny, I think.
I think is what it's supposed to be. Yeah, deny player agency. I confirmed that PC1 was fine with this by using Zoom's direct messaging. PC1 then nudged under the remote-controlled nanite influence, killed the NPC the group had captured for information. Unsure why this happened, the group decided to completely immobilize PC1, tying him to a chair. The group removed the device attached to PC1, saw his wounds, and had gained clues to the presence of the nanites, as well as try to cure PC1 of the affliction. This effort was led by a street doctor character we'll call PC2, played by Player 2. In another surprising twist, PC2 Street Doctor, out of nowhere, attempted to kill immobilized PC1.
Wow.
Ouch.
Player 2's rationale was that PC1 was an untrustworthy murderer and a danger to the group. Player 2 might not have been entirely wrong, since Player 1's character was not under any outside influence when PC1 went murder hobo and killed the gang boss.
Oh, see, it's tying in that with the new thing together, and now someone's seeing a trend.
Yeah, however, this was a street doctor and saw what happened.
However, this sort of execution didn't follow PC2's medical persona, and the execution ran counter to the new information about the nanites. In my games, I might not like it if a PC wants to kill the NPC, but I go with it, and we'll play out the scene with everyone involved. If it happens, the story adjusts accordingly. However, when PCs try to kill each other, I intervene a bit to ensure the course of action is intended as stated. Whether it's an NPC or PC that might be killed, I say things like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" Yet, with a PC killing another PC, I also ask more about motivation and reason and decision checkpoints. I also ensure that PCs have a chance to participate in the meta discussion and act in game if those actions would viably happen in the scene. I generally try to avoid PC killing PC game situations, which might cause any out-of-hand game hurt feelings and other negativity between players. You want to read, or do you want me to continue on?
Yeah, I can pick up reading.
Okay.
I have thoughts on this already,
Okay.
but in general, this is rough.
Yes.
The conversation then devolved quickly, with player 2 accusing me of railroading him, taking away his options. He said it wasn't fair that player 1 should be able to execute their NPC gang boss with no real pushback. Then I get in player 2's way when he wants to do the same thing to player 1. Really, they're apples and oranges. I allowed a combat initiative, which gave the other players in the scene a chance to physically respond and roleplay the situation. Everyone ended up living. Player 2 did some shouting and plenty of accusation, but eventually quieted down and the scene moved forward. Player 2 spent much of the rest of the evening sitting at his computer chair, aimlessly waving a katana around and sipping on various alcoholic drinks.
I'm not going to judge, but I'm judging.
Is it like a weapon-grade katana?
Yeah.
I later learned that player 2 had switched from wine at the beginning of the game to bourbon at some point.
Those have very different levels of alcohol in them.
Yeah. And I'm not sure how much of either he consumed over a 4-hour game session, but there were plenty of refills of bourbon.
Refills of bourbon. One's enough for me for like the entire night.
Yeah, right. Our group thinks that much of the rant about railroading was alcohol-driven. Alcohol does tend to do that. I think this reason to be upset has merit. So this horror story leads me to 3 questions for the Happy Jacks crew. What are your thoughts about PCs killing other PCs, and when, if at all, you should intervene? With your responses, assume the type of gameplay style is not meant to be player versus player, and that it was not specifically addressed during a session 0. Do we want to start there, or should I read them all?
Read them all first, and then we'll go back one.
Okay. How would you handle an upset player that considers GM intervention of killing another PC as railroading? And do you treat drinking during gameplay differently with virtual gameplay, where it is more difficult for players to observe each other's drinking? And how do you handle obnoxiously drunk players mid-game, virtually or in person?
I'm feeling attacked.
4. What do you do about store... Thank you for... all you have done and continue to do for our community. Keep on being awesome. Cheers, Sean, from just outside of Washington, D.C., exact location undisclosed. Are you Jedi, R-U-Jedi on Discord? Oh, no, it's just Are you Jedi?
Okay, so thoughts on PCs killing other PCs, and when, if at all, would you intervene? With your responses, assume the type of gameplay style is not meant to be player versus player, and it was not specifically addressed in session 0.
Also, they are long-term friends, which I think also feeds into the situation.
Right.
If this was just like a table of people I didn't know, I would be like out, But there's some other delicacies here. So delicacies, that's not the right word.
It's okay, we know what you meant.
Yeah, that's like something.
It's been a long time since we've all interacted like person
Like
to person.
people?
And it's throwing us. Our language is gone.
Intricacies.
Thank you.
Machinations.
Nuances. There you go. See, and I can see when you go into with a session 0, not like when we do the vampire game, I kind of let everyone know, just because you're playing vampire, there's always a possibility that the players are going to come into cross conflict with each other, and you are all monsters.
And that game is set up for players to not like players from day one.
Oh, the guilds,
the whole clan,
the clan system and everything. Yes, absolutely. So, and I've had PCs kill other PCs in games in the past, more than once. So, to me, it's something I would mention in a session 0. I mean, I would at least bring it up as a thing. Is this something we want in the game or not? If we don't want it, let's make sure that the PCs have some sort of relationships pre-session 1, where they wouldn't even consider doing something like that. No, this is my friend. I wouldn't do that to him. or or relative, or whatever the thing is. But assuming we didn't have that kind of conversation, I would stop the game immediately and have that conversation right there and then.
Yeah.
Break character. We're out of the game. We need to talk about how the scene is going to play out and how everyone's going to react to it as people. Because that's the biggest problem. If everyone's cool with it and everyone's like deeply involved in the role playing, and one of the players says, "Oh no, we're at loggerheads and we would probably come to blows over this, and we're both willing to accept what the dice say," I'd let it go. Otherwise, it's gonna be it's only going to take the veto of one person saying, "I'm not cool with this," to say no.
I 100% agree. I think if it wasn't a cyberpunk game, I would even take it a step further, which is to say, I am Xing player versus player killing. I mean, you can have conflict, but you can't kill each other. So play this out how you need to, but no one's dying.
Right.
I would just exit. If it made sense. Now, since it's a cyberpunk game, I mean, I can see a scenario in which that would happen. So now it's really about the other player, the attacked player's agency. Mm-hmm. This isn't about the attacking player's agency. So I would come forward and say, all right, we have a situation, let's pull it out. Hadn't anticipated player versus player combat. Player being attacked, are you okay with this? Is this something that you want to participate in? If yes, what about the rest of you? And then yeah, it has to be a meta conversation. Otherwise, it's gonna turn into this.
Right. I mean, this back when I was in college, before there was any thought of anything like this, we'd let it play out.
Yeah, that's how old me would have done it.
Yeah, and in the end, the player whose character was murdered by two other characters, because it was two of them. In the end, he was a little miffed while it was happening, but after it happened, we had a conversation after the game, and they're like, "Look, your character was paranoid. Your character was delusional. Like, these are actual disadvantages he took as creating the character. You were seeing delusions everywhere, and you had already started assuming that we were part of some conspiracy to try to kill you." So, that was one of those situations where a character was made that was going to be untenable in a non-PC versus PC.
They'd already
situation.
set up a bunch of road marks that would have led to that character being
I think so.
a liability anyway.
Right.
I mean, it was only going to be a matter of time before something came to head where it would be dangerous.
Right, and this was
clearly he had built a character that was unstable.
And he also built a character who was a mage, who was an extremely dangerous mage. This was in GURPS. And he could have, with preparation and with enough distance, probably could have taken out a couple members of the party before they could have done anything to him.
I feel like that's maybe a little bit different. Because I'm thinking back now on when I was a kid playing, and it got personal. One of the guys was doing something in character that none of the rest of us liked. I think he was trying to torture an NPC for info. I don't remember the full thing, but we ended up taking the player character out because the guy was being a douche.
Right.
And he took it personally, and he went away.
Teenage boys.
Teenage boys. And what happens is it bleeds. It gets personal.
Yeah,
Are you
definitely.
really killing the player character because of the player character? Or are you killing the player character because of the player?
Right.
And I think that's where it gets foggy. And even if you all agree that, okay, we can do player versus player, it tends to get personal. You still feel a sting.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And it's really hard to keep that bleed into real life. You guys all ganged up and killed me.
Yeah.
You can't. It takes a really good person and a sober person to keep those feelings apart.
Yeah. The other thing is, this isn't about guardrailing one player. This is about protecting the experience for the entire table.
Right.
So
That's
if
a
that
very good
requires guardrailing somebody, that's what it requires. And so we can't use that as a defense. Like, oh, you're not letting me have agency. Well, your actions are not letting them have agency. So,
Right.
we have to have an adult conversation. And this is something I would interrupt the game for.
Yeah, I think so.
Sometimes this happens because somebody's feeling like they're not having enough spotlight time. Sometimes there's players that act out and do something stupid to seize control and have the spotlight for a little bit.
Right.
And sometimes it's just as simple as I'm going to punch the guard in the face. Everybody else is shopping. What? well, I've been sitting here for 20 minutes.
I'm
and
bored.
I haven't done anything, and I'm bored,
Right.
so I'm going to punch you up. So that shit happens.
It does. It does.
And now all of a sudden, as a GM, you're like, you punch the... Oh, okay.
And that may be a GM failure, because you want to make sure the spotlight gets shared.
Well, and certain personalities too, they need to be in that spotlight all the time. And sometimes they have little machinations that they're, that they don't necessarily share with the rest of the party. And they look at the GM and go, "All right, I'm going to do the thing." And you're like, "Okay." And the player's like, "What? There's a secret between you guys? Fuck you guys! Fuck you! We're going to fucking fuck that guy. What are you keeping secrets from us for?" And now all of a sudden it gets. Again, it bleeds a little. It's a little bit of personal stuff going on, but you also here's their bored player character that just wants to jumpstart something, and so he does something murder hobo-y, and it leads to player versus player conflict, and it can lead to death.
Right. I mean, there's the outcomes of the, but I think we all kind of agree. Like, if you hadn't discussed, in party combat in session 0, when it comes up, you need to have that session 0 conversation then and there.
Yes.
I think we all kind of agree on that.
And some games are better at this than others. But if it's a game with hit points and
well, there's like a mechanical death, right?
Oh, for sure.
Then right, you've got to handle
For
it.
sure. And also, that said, game systems will absolutely sort of determine player versus player lethality and even likelihood.
But even if it's not to death, that might even be worse.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, I'm going to beat him down until he stops saying he's going to want to do the thing that I don't want him to do.
Right.
And you succeed in doing that, but leave the character alive.
Yeah, now you have that.
Now you've just put a whole bunch of baggage on it.
Yeah.
And the player may be a little miffed that he lost whatever the conflict was, and then he has the justification of his character having the shit kicked out of him.
And again,
it's like not even getting to the point where they're at blows, whether it's lethal or not. I think could be important.
And again, is that people have already, at that point you've already taken it one step away from it being a PC conflict and a player thing. It's like one player has an agenda, wants to go do one thing, the other player has another agenda, doesn't want that player to do that thing because they want to do their thing. That's two players having a problem with each other, not two PCs having a problem with each other. It's cloaked in, well, my PC wouldn't do that, but really it's about players want to have two separate agendas.
Right.
And it's that line blurs a lot.
Now let me ask you a question that he didn't ask that I think is very relevant. You're a player in this sort of situation where you've come to loggerheads and you have a disagreement on what to do that there is no resolution for. How would you as a player approach dealing with that conflict in such a way that it doesn't turn into a physical conflict?
In character?
In character.
It depends on the game. Let's assume it's a D20 game. It sounds like it sort of might be. Because I can think of all kinds of games where the narrative controls make that a really juicy moment and a lot of fun. But let's assume it's not fun and it's in a D20 game. So
really not fun.
So that in that case, I am inclined to at this point break character and say, player, here's what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? Mm-hmm. And not what are you doing or what the fuck is the matter with you. It's I'm thinking this. What are you thinking? All right, what should we do?
Like a metagame discussion over how the scene's going to transpire.
I mean, because it could lead to this. Are you cool with that? And then once you check in, come in. It is totally cool to break character and check in.
Oh, sure.
And I think we need to make a habit of that, just in anything. Like I was thinking, players, my character's thinking we should go here instead of there. Like something as innocuous as that. That's totally fine. We should have those conversations. But if it's a moment where like this, where there's obviously going to lead to in-character conflict, check in.
I agree. I think we tend to try to stay in character as much as possible, and I think sometimes that can be a problem. I really think sometimes everybody needs to just like blow the whistle and go, all right, wait. Can we talk about this for a second? Oh, my character wouldn't do that. No, that's not what we're talking about right now. We really need to make sure we're all on the same page here. If you punch that guard, we're going to be wanted in this city. Are we all okay with that? Is this a thing that we're going to want to do?
But I mean, in character, like I'm thinking, like I've had situations where we've had that conflict where we've come to loggerheads. In a Supers game, I was playing a character who was way more on the sort of vigilante side of it than the guardian of the justice side of it. And we came into a conflict. I ended up retiring the character. It's like he quit. He quit the group or the super group. Yeah, it's like clearly the two of us are not going to work together. And then I hand the character sheet to the GM and I make up start working on a new character at that point.
Yeah, because you saw on a meta level you would break the story, or at least
it was just,
make a bad time.
You could just see it was going to come to the fact that they were all going to come to blows.
And
rather than the PCs all ganging up on him and it becoming a free-for-all, he said, I'm going to retire.
Yeah, he just walked away because it was, this new supergroup had been established or something.
This is Oppenheimer, right?
It was Oppenheimer. Yeah. And so he walked away. The GM ended up the game never ran long enough to find out, but now you've got a potential villain.
Yeah, sure.
At some point.
It scorned.
That takes a pretty mature player to actually hand their PC over and go, here, I'm...
Well, I mean, if you're looking at it from the situation of, trying to keep sort of the integrity of the story going, where we had built two characters. This is long before anyone ever thought of having session zeros. This is in the 80s. And we had both made characters who were, it's basically kind of the Superman versus Batman thing. It was very similar to that kind of conflict. And I just think we just probably handled it more realistically than the comic books usually do. It's like, you know what? Fuck you. And then both go their separate ways, right? And, and this was in Champions when it takes some effort to make a character. But a
whole day.
But to me, I thought for the character I was playing, I thought it made kind of a really cool little sort of miniature arc for him.
Yeah.
It's like he's going to try the hero thing. Maybe that's not for him.
I can tell you this: I never would have thought about doing that when I was that same age playing Champions. I would have fought to the death.
Yeah, I would have too.
I tend to dig my heels in when it comes to stuff like that, and I think a lot of players do. Not everybody's able to go, this is not going to work out, this is going to be bad. Some people it's precious. Their character's precious, and they want to cling on to and then they start feeling attacked, and they get stubborn. And alcohol will not help that.
Yeah, that adds another dimension.
That starts making, now everybody starts being unreasonable.
Right.
And
because alcohol turns off the tiny portion of your brain that makes us reasonable.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right.
It numbs it good.
And I think in situations like that, like you said, I think that's when if this were my game, I probably would have said, I think right now is a really good time to stop.
Yeah. First of all, 4-hour session on Zoom. Whoa.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a lot.
I think I would have ended the game before any combat or anything like that would have happened.
Let cooler heads prevail. Wait your 2 weeks.
Just wait 2 weeks and come back to it later, and then maybe we could have a discussion outside the game about all of that, and then perhaps everybody comes back sober and we can. But I would definitely have stopped it then. It's in hindsight that's easy to say, but when you're caught up in the game and you're especially as a GM and on Zoom and you're looking at all the windows and you're all of the balls in the air. You want to help you want your players. Oh, this is the player's choice. So you're all of these minds. You're like, well, do I keep going with my players? This is clearly something that they want to do. Do I back off now and blow the whistle? How do I stop? How do you? So it's easy in hindsight to say I would have just pulled everybody out of the pool. But what do how do you watch for that in game and stop it before it goes too far?
Also, I think this happened kind of early because he spent the rest of the night playing with his katana.
Oh, sulky, yeah.
And sulking about it. So, yeah, maybe it wasn't an option even if you thought of it.
We had a game where there's a guy that was unstable. It's a whole other story. But he got so awful in a game, we just stopped it.
Yeah.
And so I can think back on times when it was like, all right, I think we're done for the night.
For safety's sake.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes, too, we would get together, because we would get together every weekend, and there were sometimes we're like, nobody's really into gaming tonight, all right, let's just go get some beer and we'll hang out and do something else. Because clearly people just weren't into it.
Right.
So there are times when we've just stopped it. But it's usually because things you feel the vibe.
Right.
And that's kind of maybe something in the room, too. You don't necessarily get that
and
on Zoom.
I think that kind of dovetails into probably the sort of answers that we probably would all come up with to a second question. How would you handle an upset player that considers GM intervention of killing another PC as railroading? And that is, let's table this then. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, if someone is... you're on different wavelengths if after you've had the sort of metagame discussion and the person's still upset about not being able to kill the character they want to kill, there's something there that brains need to be reset a little bit. And I think at that point if you were in that situation, I think I would. If someone was genuinely upset by it, I think I would stop the game and say, hey, let's cut it short and come back.
It's a big deal, whether people are upset or not. It's like, it's a big deal. I need to wrap my brain around this.
Right.
We all need maybe.
And once someone gets into a bad mood,
yeah,
It's over at that point.
that's the thing.
you might as well not have the game running, at least for until your next session.
On the topic of alcohol, this is a tricky one because if you are close friends with this person and you're observing an alcohol problem, that's one thing.
Right.
If they just were drinking too much that night, and that's another. If you don't know this person very well and this is a consistent problem, that's another. In that situation, just get out of the group.
Right.
You're making this game experience toxic consistently. Let's just move on. You don't have to tell them that. I wouldn't tell them that, but I would,
Just make it happen.
Come up with an adult way to move on. But if this is a friend, there should be an honest discussion at some point. I wouldn't do things like limit table drinks because that comes off as punitive, especially to somebody that's maybe struggling. But it's not your job really to fix somebody's drinking problem. It's your job to keep the table safe. So those are really two different conversations.
Well, it shouldn't be your job to keep the table safe. That's kind of the rub right there. And a lot of geeks drink because they're socially anxiety, and the alcohol will help. It sort of greases the wheels and allows you to relax a bit. But when it gets out of hand like this, he switched to bourbon and refilled.
Yeah.
At that point, I don't care how cool you are, you're going to make bad decisions.
If you're drinking bourbon like wine,
you're going to make some bad decisions.
at some point you're just drunk and you're not going to be a cogent member of the group at all.
Yeah, and this has happened to me at my table, actually, at a con, where the person wasn't belligerent, but they were definitely, passed out or on the way to being passed out.
Oh, that drunk?
Yeah.
He was in one of my games, too. Yeah.
And in retrospect, I wish I would have said, why don't you go lay down? It's cool. You don't
Yeah,
need
but
to
you're
be
already
here.
in a con game. You don't know. I know. I had the same guy.
Are you serious? You had the same person?
I don't know if it was the same guy, but somebody showed up at my table hammered. We know him. He might also have been high.
Yeah, I mean,
There
I
might
guess
have been some mushrooms involved.
Oh.
in retrospect, I mean, it's nice to say, okay, why don't you go ahead and lay down? We'll catch you up later and try to gracefully get them out of the game because it's just going to ruin the experience for everybody.
And that's what happened with my con game too. It was a traveler game we were running, and I felt bad because there were some other people in the game that were new to playing and had heard so much about it and were excited, and this other guy was ruining their experience, or at least I perceived it that way.
Right.
And I ended up apologizing to a couple of people later, and they were like, that sucked. So, again, I mean, at a con game where everybody's already signed up and everything, you can't necessarily stop it. You guys, you're in for a penny, in for a pound to go. It's only
No,
before
I don't know. I disagree. I disagree with that. Yeah, I mean, yes, everyone's at a con game, but if you're getting to the point where people are, where there's someone who's drunk enough where they're becoming belligerent. No, you are well within your rights. I mean, I don't have to sit and run a game at a con for the free. The free badge is not worth someone getting hurt. Well, let me put it that way.
And many cons have safety guidelines in play, so that you can actually go and
right.
get the con organizer to handle it for you. You're not responsible for that, for babysitting people like that.
Well, Dave and I were co-GMing, and we just kept him busy and distracted with sharp, sparkly things, and then and occasionally he would seize the moment and talk and ramble, and we would all look at him and okay, great, cool, and then go back on with the game. We were able to handle it, but it's when people start to get belligerent and they start to make bad decisions. At what point as a GM do you say, that's too much? I mean, do you stop the game and ask everybody's, should we, and is it okay? I mean, because I think a lot of GMs don't think that that's okay. I think they think that they are now robbing the player of their experience, because you feel a responsibility. People have driven from all over town to come and join you and play a game, and do you feel okay stopping it an hour and a half in?
I mean, I view my job as a GM not only as the facilitator of the game, but as the mom of the table, I guess.
You are the leader of the group.
Yeah,
you are the leader of the group.
So it's like an ER when they say, you set the tone. You are you're the boss, and it's your job to keep the table free of problems. That's why we have safety tools to help with that. And if somebody is drinking to the point of belligerence, or drinking to the point where they're sulking with a katana, I would probably turn off their video and message them and say, maybe take a time out. let's talk tomorrow. Sounds
Yeah.
like you're not doing so well, and
Right.
then work it into the story. But yeah, I do view that as the GM's job.
Okay.
I don't know if everybody.
I bring it up because it is. I think a lot of GMs feel a responsibility for their players and such, and there's.
Well, I mean,
Multiple ways to-
there's limits to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not responsible for stopping the player from drinking.
No.
Right.
I'm responsible for making sure that everyone else at the table is in a situation where they feel safe, and if it's a physical situation where you're sitting around a physical table, that like they're physically safe. You know
I think
what
that's
I mean?
important to say. I mean, as a GM, like you are the director of the movie. You know,
Right.
there's a point where you pull the plug. You know, when your star is, 5 hours late and shows up to set,
Drunk.
doesn't know their lines, don't know the line, then you stop and you find something else to shoot that day.
Right.
You know, and in,
I mean,
in many ways, it's the
you
same
can kind of
situation.
think. You can kind of think of it like, because there are other things to do at a game convention than
Yeah,
play a game,
that
right?
is
So
true.
it's like, okay, they're here for 4 hours. If a situation is in a certain, falls down in a certain situation where this is not going to be an entertaining game, we can adjourn the game. They can go to the dealer room. They can go to open gaming. At least they can go do something else that's con related.
That's fair.
Rather than sitting in the torture of the drunk dude
Yeah.
with the katana, apparently.
I mean, at that point, he's just posturing. It's just
Or sulking.
He's
Or
sulking.
and
It
he's
sounds
like,
like he's sulking.
Nobody's paying attention to me, so I'm going to sit here. I mean, that's just all that is somebody who really wanted the spotlight and was
I think
bored,
you're right. I
like
think
we
you're
brought
right.
up, and it's a dangerous thing, and that can bored players can manifest bad decisions in a lot of different ways.
Oh, sure.
Whether it's completely seeing your plot point and then going the other way just to f with you, or doing something in their backstory that takes away from everybody else's gameplay. Like, I'm going to now go and find my long lost sister. Like, what? Wait, we're in the middle of the mountains. We're on, just about ready to enter the dragon's cave. I don't. No, I'm going to go find my sister now. I'm leaving. What? Or whatever it is.
Something like that happened at a table once, and I said, okay. I pulled out the adventure book. I said, this is the adventure you all agreed to play. If you do that, we're not playing this adventure. We're going to play another adventure, and that's cool. But I need to reset and come up with something else. And they went, oh, so this is the one you want to play? Okay,
This is what this is why we're here.
let's get back to it then. All right.
Right.
And that's a really good way of handling it. Again, you like blew the whistle and said, out of the pool. You, out of the pool.
Maybe I'm too strict. I don't know.
No, you just kept it focused.
But I've got zero tolerance for that. I'm just, you know what? We're here to do a thing. We have a social contract. Let's do the thing.
Right.
That's what it boils down to. Again, we've talked about that early on in our thing, which is it's a social contract. We all show up to have make a play and make a story and have
right,
fun.
and have fun.
And there is an understanding that we're all going to have fun together.
Yes.
Not that watch somebody else have fun, and while we, and
Or
if
watch
they
someone
don't have
else
fun, they sulk.
wallow around in bourbon.
Yeah.
Sean from just outside Washington, D.C. is in the chat room.
Oh, hi.
Oh.
And a couple of he says it is much easier to tell someone about drinking in person, much harder to tell them on Zoom.
Yeah.
I would definitely leave that as an off-air conversation. If it's a conversation that you're comfortable with.
It's also hard as a GM, even in person, to keep track of how many drinks somebody's had.
Oh, sure.
And especially on Zoom, when they could easily just disappear and you're as a GM, you've got so many balls in the air and you've got so many things in your mind. The last thing you're paying attention to is how grown up the person is being.
Yeah, and it's not your job to monitor people's drinking. I mean, if it's a friend and there's a problem, that's an offline thing that you can deal with in whatever way you need to deal with it. But at the table, I mean, come on.
It's not necessarily your fault as a GM that he ended up doing this,
No.
I think. This is all on that player. It's about response and stuff to it. And again, how are you supposed to know how drunk he is? It sounds like the other players were like, he's been drinking all night long, and he'd switched to bourbon, and you're like, he did. In hindsight, you're like, oh my God, I should have stopped it earlier. But you didn't even know he switched to bourbon. You didn't, and that could even see that happening at a table. Because people just have little drinks, and you don't know what's in them, and you don't ask, and it's not your job. So it's stuff like that happens, but that's on the player, not you as a GM. Don't beat yourself up over it. But now that you know, sometimes it's something to keep an eye on, I guess. Especially with that player.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
All right.
That's cool.
Sister in the chat, where outside of DC are you?
Yeah, women specifically.
He had a PS.
Get a couple.
Drink a tasty beverage of choice.
I just finished my coffee.
I had a-
Postscript.
I had a tangerine.
Don't try to kill each other after taking that drink. Cheers.
We won't.
A hint of tangerine, not too much. Just a.
It's like, yeah, they have bubbly water and they walk through the room with a tangerine.
Yeah, right.
and
It's like
just
a
enough.
memory of a tangerine.
He says he's in Wheaton, Maryland. 5 minutes a drive from D.C. So there's your answer.
Depends on the time of day, though, right?
Probably. Well, I don't know. I don't know if they get traffic. Do they get? They probably
yeah.
at Beltway. They do.
Dave has Dave is an intern in DC early on, right out of school, and he has these epic stories about the traffic
And the drinking.
the weather, and the drinking. I mean, he can go for hours, and it's fascinating to listen to him. And he was only there for like a year or something or two.
I don't know how
And
long
the
he was
stories he collected in the 2
Oh
years
my
that he was
God.
there, they're epic. And yeah, DC is a place. That's
Maryland's a beautiful part of the country.
it's better than DC, I guess.
He said regarding the drinking. He says, "I don't think any of us picked up on it until later.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the katana waving that we really knew."
At that point, bring out the claymore. He's like, "You want to play?"
And it was. He said it was one of those katanas you get from the game convention, so it's not sharp.
Oh, okay.
Hey, I have
Decorative.
I have some swords and such, but I don't bring them to the gaming table. And if you have a player that likes to bring swords to a gaming table, I find them suspect to begin with.
Well, but it's Zoom. He's
True.
just got
It's
toys
like-
In his
sitting
room,
around.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah.
Okay.
It's probably hanging on the wall above his monitor, right next to his Funkos.
I have a sword above my monitor.
And in his bourbon-induced sulk, he. Yeah. Tell me what to do. I'm going to sit here and play with my katana.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a cavalry saber.
I have a bunch of.
Although I don't keep it so I can sit here.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I've got a Damascus steel. It's beautiful. Over my wall.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah. I love those.
We work rent.
Is it
there.
sharpened?
There's so many
Yeah.
sharpened.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, it's like the only weapon grade one I have, so that's where I'm going if there's a burglar.
There you go.
But, like I know how to use it.
It's still intimidating. If the guy plays any RPGs,
Right.
But katanas are always do more damage than any other sword. So he's going to go, oh shit, no, he's got a katana. Never mind.
The pointy end goes towards the enemy. That's the only thing you really need to know.
But the important thing to know about a katana is you want to nick him with the end.
Yeah, because that's enough to kill him. Right.
Yeah.
Katanas and headbutts are overpowered no matter where you go.
Yeah. I mean, I figured just brandishing it wildly would do the trick.
And screaming
Yeah.
with wild eyes.
Right.
Yes.
That is intimidating. That's the whole point. All right.
You end up with the Indiana Jones moment, though.
Right. And that'll be a headline the next day.
Right. That's possible. Okay. World building. I did not come up with anything this week. But, Chris, have you come up with anything? Or Stork, either one of you?
I can do something on the
So
spot.
let me just, to explain, we're building a world one session at a time. And I'm putting the thing, if it wouldn't lock up, I've got notes in a Google Doc. I may switch this over to Obsidian Portal.
Ooh, yeah.
Because I'm using that for the GURPS.
Chris, you're a big fan of Obsidian.
Yeah,
Portal.
it's great.
He,
It's great.
he not only drinks it, I think he actually sells the Kool-Aid.
But I may
haven't
start
used it in a while, but it's great. I love it.
I may because what we're doing very well, nicely fits a wiki.
And make it accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
And everybody can see it.
I have an idea. This is something that I was going to use. I've been holding on to this idea for a long, long time, but I'll just put it out there because I can still use it. It's a small village. In my world, it was called Wolverton, but you can name it anything you want. And it is a village of lycanthropes. So anybody that was affected with lycanthropy would get contacted by this village, and they would all end up in this place.
Sort of like a leper colony.
Yeah,
Exactly
so
like a
mind,
leper
yeah.
colony, but for lycanthropes. And they're all in various stages of lycanthropy, but it's a safe place for lycanthropes to go to get control of their affliction where everybody understands. And maybe not everybody in the village is lycanthropic. There might be people, but they just understand. Spouses or whatever, and they understand that when there come a full moon, Dad's going to go crazy, and they might have all these rituals. So it can be. My idea for the village is like there's this weird feeling about the village, kind of like the Wicker Man movie, where you show up at a small town and there's something going on, but you don't know what it is, and it's weird, and people are like, don't go out at night. You can think about the scene from American Werewolf in London, where he's like, stay off the moors. So you show up at this town, and it looks like an ordinary town, and people are shopping, and there's, traders coming through and all of that, but there's like, you're new here, aren't you? I'm just going to tell you to stay off the moors at night, or don't go to this section of town, and little hints like that to unnerve the players, but you never let them know what the problem is.
Right.
And the people in the village are cool about it, but they're not, they're lycanthropes. They don't want to let the rest of the outside world know.
Sure.
So it's basically, it's a leper colony for lycanthropes, and you can play this any way you want. My idea was to play it suspenseful, like in The Wicker Man, where there's clearly some agenda, some underlying thing that the rest of the villagers know that you've walked into, and it's tense and it's weird, and you don't know what it is. So it's a mystery for the players to solve, however they want to react to that.
Okay.
But you could take that and expand it. First of all, there's going to have to be some underground network.
That's what I was.
Yeah.
That was what I was just going to say. Yeah.
And some society that protects that network.
And also
And
goes
society
out
to
and,
find people.
to go out and find the lycanthropes and say, hey, we got a place where you might want to
Right,
might
so
have
they're
a
like
little better
Mormons.
life.
Right, they have like traveling recruiters.
But what if it's like a resort, though? Like, like Dirty Dancing. Sort of this remote.
Yeah.
And so they get tourists to
Or the
fund
village in
it.
The Prisoner.
Oh yeah,
The series?
Yeah. Very
So
again, a similar
something
situation.
like that. Where it's like, yes, it's kind of a prison, but it's a nice prison.
It's kind of it's self-imposed isolation. These people.
It's a club fed.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to want a nice lake, and they're going to want entertainment.
Right.
I went so far as to
Rabbits
design,
to hunt.
I went so far as to design the village, and there was like a whole building that they would lock the early lycanthropes up in every full moon, and everybody in the village just knows it's like, well, it's getting to be the full moon. I'm going to go spend my week in the cell, and the ones that have control of their powers are like, all right, good luck, and they're the jailers and such.
Right.
There's a whole system that they have set up that you as a GM and players can explore, and you can make it however you want. It could be fun, or it could be spooky. It could also just be dangerous. That they don't want you there and they want you out of town, and they're mean to you, and you don't understand why until night falls and the entire town becomes crawling with bloodthirsty, ravenous beasts.
Right.
And they also have their own set of rules too. You could have, if one werewolf attacks another werewolf, they kill them or stake them or they lock them in or whatever. They have their own sense of justice as well. So you could even have, like, if your players get attacked by some were creature in the middle of the night, and you talk to the innkeeper, he looks completely concerned. And there's all these wonderful stories that could spin out of this one town full of werewolves or full of lycanthropes. You could even have, it's not just werewolves. You could even have were-rabbits. You could have some other sort of maybe harmless ones. Even children that are lycanthropes that turn into small-looking pups or dogs. You could even have people that are permanently changed. So, like, you walk into town and there's really large dogs walking around.
Right.
With, there's like a family, a woman and 2 children, and a really large dog with them. And and they don't seem to have any problem with it. And none of the rest of the people do. They greet and they talk to the dog. Like, it's a really friendly thing.
Right.
You could have various degrees of lycanthropy too, where there's people that are stuck in their form. There's people that are able to switch back and forth at will. There's people that who for whatever reason can't get to their form, but they know that they get crazy at night. And like I said, then there could just be spouses of people that aren't lycanthropes at all. I don't know. It's just a wonderful little place that you can set up a multitude of stories and a whole world. Out of it.
That sounds fun.
It does.
What was the name of the town?
I called it Wolverton. I tend to be Dickensian in my naming, so oftentimes you can divine what the person is or what the town is like just by the name. So if your town sounds like a Wolverine, there's going to be some
some mutants.
Yeah, there's going to, or just maybe some out of sorts grumpy people that attack people. Yeah.
Alrighty, Mr. Gray.
To add to that, or something of my own?
Something of your own, whatever you want. Because usually it's a place, a person, an event, something like that.
Yeah. Okay. I just came up with a magical artifact.
Okay.
That's just on the spot because I did no preparation for this.
Fantastic.
Do you have your 3 scenes?
Yeah, I will. Well, the 3 things that make this awesome. Okay.
Nice.
So
Well played.
it's a legendary pen by the god of writing, sort of like a thought sort of character.
A scribe.
Yeah, a scribe is sort of the god of history, manifests in the sky as I don't want to use ibis, so an eagle, because I read the word eagle. So the eagle god of history and scrivenation. So but there's an artifact that apparently this god made. There's a feather quill.
An eagle feather quill.
Yes. So it's
Right.
and if you use the right ink that's been blessed by the god or by the church of the god, it will write your history.
Interesting.
And sort of like automatic writing. So you could potentially, like one guy did, some tyrant actually got the quill and was forcing his enemies and prisoners to write their history, so that he could use it against them and their cultures. And ever since then, a secret society has protected the quill so that bad people like that don't get access to it. And they keep it in an undisclosed location.
Would this quill also be able to write like secret codes or treasure maps, or would it know that and be able to write it for you?
Yes. If the person who's using the quill knows it.
It has to be the person using the quill. So you can't ask the quill, like, if I have the quill, I can't say, write Christopher Gray's secret treasure map.
No, that's why this tyrant captured me and gave me the quill because he needed to find my secrets.
Okay.
Okay. Excellent. I like
Were
that.
there 3 things in there? I think so.
It's okay.
Sure.
I was just teasing. It's a. I like that kind of artifact because it could be innocuous, but it could also, if you have a clever player, it could also be really dangerous or really advantageous. It could be really overpowered.
It's a great MacGuffin too.
It is.
So you can go. We need to find I guess we need a name for this god, Scrivener.
That's a good name.
We need to find Scrivener's quill.
I could totally see some players being, "Well, this is stupid. Why did we kill a dragon for this thing?" And I could see other players going, "This could be really interesting."
It could be used to kill somebody if
Please
it's
draw
pointy
the
end.
map of where Smaug's back door is.
You might even say that the ink has to. If you put a little bit of the blood of a person in the ink, maybe you
then
can
you
divulge
could do it.
that person's.
I love
maybe.
it.
There might be a lot of powers involved with this thing that they haven't fully experienced yet. So
Right.
you could have your players going around and, dipping into a kobold's blood and then having it write out the kobold's history, or where the kobolds, maybe it's,
But it's in Draconic, so you have to interpret it.
yeah.
Right. It's going to be in their language, whatever that is.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. I mean, you keep it open-ended enough that you could, this is just something that a GM can take and modify and run with. It's just but yeah, that could be. But again, I could see some players thinking it is just a joke, and other players could be totally utilized.
Yeah, it's one of those where if you think through it, there's a lot of applications.
Yeah.
Also, like stabbing somebody in the neck.
See, I love artifacts like that. I love a sword is a sword, but a pen, is a pen mightier than the sword?
Yes. Well, it can be. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just steal what you said about the some sort of society that has to go after.
Oh, yeah.
That goes out and collects
The underground Lycanthrope Railroad.
It's called the Lyceum.
Awesome. Yeah.
Because they came up with a name for it, so I
Perfect.
figured it.
Awesome.
Which it kind of has that lycanthrope thing to it, but it also has its own meaning, so it could, throw the players for a loop. And they're basically like a group of monks that basically keep their ear to the ground and hear stories that would cause them to go to a certain area around the time of a full moon and perhaps find someone and let them know that there is a better life someplace else for them.
And they follow up on rumors, yeah. If
Right.
you hear about a town that has a wild beast that's been attacking people once a month, they may go up there and try to figure out, because they know something about lycanthropy, and they've forgotten more than most people know, and they're like, well, let's just see if we can save this person from themselves.
Right.
That'd be a great adventuring party. I mean, it could be done as a serial.
yeah.
You know, it's just like the Monster of the Week kind of thing.
Yeah. your players are all lycanthropes, and they all have to go and save a town from somebody who hasn't control of themselves yet,
Right.
or may not even know.
Oh, the Lyceum may not even be lycanthropes themselves, unless they've learned to master it in some way where they can control.
Might be a mixture, yeah.
Where they can keep control of their facilities or their faculties, I should say.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Again, this town. It's something I created a long time ago, and it's something that I've been sitting on. But it's something that I've always thought would be a really fun place for players to just visit.
Right.
And it could become, like I said, it could become a whole adventure in and of itself.
And for 4 or 5 days, it's most of the most terrifying place you can go.
Very well be.
All right.
End up in the Wicker Man yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and roll this out. Wrong one again. Thank you for joining us for Season 28, Episode 15 of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
Stork.
Chris.
We'll see you next week, Saturday, 10 a.m. Pacific Time, right here. Until then, stay safe. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
We pursue this hobby from Michigan to Australia and maybe East Timor. Be it riffs or exalted, GURPS or Dungeons and Dragons, hero, pathfinder, fate or savage worlds, evil plots will be usurping, though we could do with less burping. Happy Jack's podcast will be douchebags all.
The preceding program has been a presentation of the Angry Folk Media Empire.